So here we are, and we're continuing our journey into the Shibashi. It gets called Tai Chi, so we'll call it Shibashi Tai Chi form, comprised of 18 movements. That's what Shibashi means. We're going to start from the beginning. I'm going to do some movements sat down, some movements standing up. You, of course, can choose whether you wish to stand, sit, do a combination of either. And I think you all know the rules now. Look after yourselves, move comfortably. If you simply want to watch, that's okay. I'm just going to push my box back and then we'll get started with our first movements. Okay, first movement, Shisha. Seems simple, but it's the movement that sets the scene, so it's worth just purposefully slowing down. Perhaps on every downward movement, you could have this sense of turning the volume down on the day that you've had, whether it's been a great day or a not so great day. Turn the volume down. Just see if you can create some headspace for yourself. You can, of course, have a breath in, followed by a breath out, if it feels good to do so. But just use these opening movements as an opportunity to just kind of bring your attention to where you are and to how you feel. Take notice of any tension that's built up, maybe in the shoulders. We'll do one more of these. See if you can connect to the ground, either through your seat, and now we're opening the chest. Second movement. Use these movements as a kind of a way of tuning into yourself. I've said it in previous sessions, but for the record, these movements give us an opportunity to ask inquisitive questions, such as, how do I feel? How does my body feel? How does my emotional state sit at this moment in time? And of course, you may have achy bits, painful bits, uncomfortable bits in the body as well. I'll make that the last one as well. Let's just have a little shake out before we do the next movement, which is called embracing rainbows. Here we go, lifting the hands and arms overhead. It's as if we're holding a beach ball and we're tilting to the right. Doesn't matter if you've gone to the left. And then we're tilting to the opposite side. If you're standing up, as some of you may well do, see if you can let your hips slide in the opposite direction that you take your hands. So there's some weight shift to the opposite leg. That's a bit of a counterbalance to the hand movement, but it also just gives us a bit of a stretch in the hip that you will feel if you are able to just let your hips go. If you're seated with me, then you could just try to emphasize a little bit in the opposite direction of the hands. So I'm taking my hands across to my left, so I'm kind of emphasizing my right hip. I'm kind of pushing a little bit towards the opposite side, and then I'm going to push to the left side as I take my hands over. We'll do one more to the left. And then I'm going to let my hands relax. Again, have a shake out, because again, those are quite strong positions to be in. And then we move into parting clouds, or as we know it, the fountain. Opening up, lifting the chest, and then letting the hands fall away. Alternating which hand is in front of the other as we go. It's a movement that lends itself to a big breath in if it feels right for you. Again, we're not counting how many reps we're doing. We're just going with the flow, so to speak. We're going by feel. Some movements may feel that's exactly what I want to do more of. And maybe there's some movements that feel like, I'm going to do some, but I'm not going to spend so much time on this. You get to choose. A bit different from perhaps a exercise class where things are a bit more prescriptive. We want to kind of create a different atmosphere here. I'm going to do one more of these. Excellent. Party McClouds. Again, little shakeout is useful. I'm going to stand up and do the next 2 or 3 movements standing up just to illustrate. But again, if you're seated, that's okay. So next movement is rolling arms in Shibashi. In Yang style Tai Chi, it's called repulse monkey. We start off by turning to the right. Again, if you sat down, make sure you're not going to knock anything over. Make sure you've got a bit of room. And I'm watching this right hand push through and forwards. And then I'm going to turn to look to the left hand, both palms up now, and then push the left hand through. And we just turn the torso. If we're standing up, the hips, shoulders, head and neck turn together. That's it. And if you sat down, it's a bit more orientated through the waist and shoulders, neck and head. Breathe comfortably. And just push through. Try to keep those hands low, below shoulder height if possible. That will help take pressure off the shoulders. It's still going to create a bit of a ache in the shoulders, but that's okay. We'll do one more on each side. I'm going to push through. Final one. I'm just going to let the hands melt away. And again, if we're standing up, might have a little kick and a shake. And if you sat down, you can shake your arms. You might be able to shuffle in your seat as well to relieve pressure. Again, certainly for lower limb amputations, relieving pressure, whether we're seated or standing, is a kind of bit of an occupational element of day-to-day life, isn't it? Relieving pressure either in a socket or relieving pressure because we've been sat down for a long time. So any kind of movement that facilitates that is really useful for us. Okay, next movement called rowing the boat. Start off small, small circles, and the hands are coming up and then forwards and down. And I'll keep going, but I'm just turning to the side so that you can see like so. And as we begin to feel more confident with the movement, we can expand the size of the circles. We might let the rib cage lift a little, let the hands begin to come overhead. And now we're really winding the arms up and then slowly down. Very much like doing the butterfly swimming stroke if you were to imagine yourself doing such a thing. I'll just turn, we'll do a couple more. Really big expansive movement. It's as much about letting the rib cage lift And that helps you lift the hands and arms, whereas if you keep the rib cage depressed, it just makes life harder. So do let the rib cage lift. Make this the last one. And again, little shake out. So that was rowing the boat. Okay, so that gets us to 6 movements. The next 3 movements continue our rotation. So we're casting our cares away. So just to ensure that we're on the same side, let's wave our right hands. I'm going to mirror. This is my left hand, but you wave your right hands. And then we're turning to the left. If it's your right hand, you turn and cast your cares away to the left, and then drop that hand, and now you take your opposite hand and cast to the right. And then you're just alternating, casting your cares away from left to right with the opposite hand. Some of you might have the facility, if you're standing, to let a heel lift as we do so. So let the heel lift. I can do that on my left leg, this one, my intact leg, but it's jolly difficult to do it with a prosthetic because it's just not what prosthetics do. If you sat down, again, see if you can have some emphasis to the hip on the side that you cast your cares away. So see if you can emphasize the left hip if you're casting to the left. See if you can put some emphasis onto the right hip when you cast again. It relieves a little bit of pressure. It's helping you think about coordinating those muscles of the trunk for stabilization. I'm going to do one more. Don't worry if we're, again, out of sync, just like so, casting your cares away. Our next movement is a twist and a turn and looking upwards towards an imaginary moon that is behind us. Let's go to the right. So we turn and we lift our hands and arms and we look up and behind, and then sweep the hands down and do the same on the left. Don't force the movement. So for some people, you might have lots of range of motion and be able to pretty much almost look completely behind you. And for other people, it might be more that you're looking off to the right and looking off to the left. And as we've explored before, don't expect to have the same range of motion on both sides. You may be lucky, you might have the same range of motion, but some of us, like me, have restricted range of motion on one side, and that's okay. Work with your body, how it moves, not how anyone else moves. Again, that can sometimes be a refreshing change from more prescriptive type exercises where we have permission to just listen to our bodies and move accordingly rather than to kind of set forms. Let's relax there. And again, kick and a shake if you're standing up, bit of a movement break in the seat if you can, and shake out. Okay. Pushing palms, that's our next movement. And we like to imagine that we're holding 2 soup bowls. If I see that, I've got 2 soup bowls. Let's start with a right hand. This is my right hand. I'm going to tip my soup bowl and push it to the left diagonally away. Catch the soup, bring it back, tip my left hand and push it to the right. And then draw it back. and just alternate that movement. You can look in the direction of the push. So this is my left hand, so I'm looking to the right. And then with my right hand, I'm looking to the left in the direction I'm pushing. So we're crossing the center line. We're crossing the body with our hands to the opposite side. Left hand going to the right and right hand going to the left. If you're standing up, again, you've got the facility to let the hips turn as well. And if you sat down, then again, it's more about waist and shoulders, head and neck. Just breathe comfortably with the movement. And you're getting this rather nice stretch through the shoulder, aren't you? Let's do 2 more. And finish there. Wonderful. Pushing palms. Our next movement, for some of you, will be a familiar movement. Cloud hands or wave hands in clouds from Yang style Tai Chi. Let's start with our right hand and sweep it around in front of the chest, palm facing in. Left hand sweeps underneath. I like to describe this as holding a partner between my shoulder blades with your top hand and in the small of the back with the lower hand. Have someone in mind. And then a little sweep and turn to the right in the direction of the top hand, and then we take that top hand off, we exchange hands up and down, and then we sweep them to the left because the left hand's on top. And we take that top hand off, we exchange hands, and we sweep our dance partner back to the right, and we just alternate from left to right. We're rotating the trunk to get the hands to sweep from one side to the other. We're breathing comfortably. We're using our head to turn as well. We're looking in the direction in which we're turning. And again, for those of us who are standing up, there's an opportunity to use the hips as well. Wonderful. Let's do a couple more to each side, breathing comfortably. And then come back to the center. Don't worry about which hand is on top. Let the hands melt away and have a little shake. Okay, so that's 10 movements. We're going to do one more, and it introduces a slight change in emphasis. It requires some stabilization of the trunk. I'm going to demonstrate this quickly, standing up for people who are standing up, and then I'm going to demonstrate it sat down. For people who are standing up, and I'll show a variation for people sat down as well. Again, it all depends if you are wearing a prosthetic limb or not. Again, I'm really sorry, I can't speak to every person's single situation. I do have to kind of use cues like hands and feet, even though, like me, you may well be missing limbs. It would just spend far too long. So if you're standing up, I'm taking a pace a little bit diagonally with my right leg. Now, depending on whether you can flex that front knee is an interesting question in itself. So you might be able to, but you might not be able to. So again, it's very much about how you create stability for yourself. I'm going to have a bit of a straighter leg. This is my prosthetic side. And I'm going to just push forward a little bit as far as you can. Again, I know this will be different for people with above or below knee amputations and the type of limbs that they have. I'm going to imagine that I'm scooping into the C. And then I'm going to push back, and I'm going to lean back and open my hands wide, and then come back forwards to scoop some more. And lean back like so. So this is a tricky movement. I appreciate that it's a tricky movement. It's called Becoming One with the Sea and Sky, which is lovely and evocative, but for us, it's a darn challenging movement to lean forwards. And we're going to do about 6 to 8 times on this one side, and then we'll be stepping back if we are standing up. But again, you have to work with your body. It might be impossible for you to get much weight to go forward, particularly if you have a transfemoral amputation where the knee might have a tendency to unlock. Okay, I'm going to step back. Same thing on the left side. We're going to take a step, but I'm going to sit down. If you are standing up, do your step to the left. Again, look after your balance, but just to demonstrate sat down, I'm going to push my seat back a bit. You know, I know you can't see my legs, but if you do have both limbs, whether they're intact or not, on the ground, then you can extend a limb. I'm sorry that my feet have disappeared, but here's my left leg. So if I was going to the left, I'd push my foot forward. Does that make sense? Can you see that? I'm pushing my foot forward. Just gives us a little bit of extra support so that when I lean forward, I'm leaning into that support and then coming back. So I hope that makes sense. I've created a bigger base of support by pushing that lead foot out. If you have two lower limbs on the ground, and that's possible. Same thing. Notice that we're not rounding the back. Have you noticed? We're just tilting forwards. If you're standing up, you're just tilting at a diagonal line from the foot to the head in both orientations. If you sat down, then you're tilting from your seat. Okay, and then I'm going to bring that supporting leg back to a kind of normal sitting position. Okay, does that make sense? I'm going to do the same. So we'll practice this movement again, shall we? So this is my right leg. This is my prosthetic. I don't have a fancy foot. I have a very basic foot. So it means that I have the joy of tripping people and things up because my toes constantly stick up, but I'm still going to extend it out. Can you see that I've extended it out? My toes are pointing up, but the heel is down on the ground. It still gives me some support for this movement moving across. So if you can do the same, even if it is a prosthetic limb, try to do so. Again, it just helps have some extra support. Again, I'm sorry if I can't speak to your particular condition, but these are just some top tips I'm hoping to impart. If you're standing up, again, you just get the opportunity to have a practice again. So let's just do 4 on this side, shall we? Just 4 complete movements. And again, for me, when I do that on the right side, I'm very mindful that I've got less range of motion. So I'm not trying to replicate what I can do on my left side, which is, to all intents and purposes, the non-injured side. So this is my last rep. I think this is 4. So again, if you're standing up, come back. I'm going to pick up my leg. Oh, heavy things, aren't they? And then I'm going to go to the left again. One more time. Same for you who are standing up. I'm going to push. This is my intact leg, so I can push it forward quite easily. My foot is now flat on the floor, so it gives me a bit more security. So I can move a bit easier into this movement. So again, it's just one of those things, isn't it? That again, we have to be mindful of how our bodies work in relation to our respective limb loss or limb difference. And again, rather than expecting you to move in exactly the same way, I'm actually encouraging you to embrace the difference and not force things, which is very much part of the philosophy of Tai Chi. We'll do one more on that side. So that's a big movement to finish off with. I hope it's a good movement because you're getting the trunk moving, which is useful. It's, again, creating some all-important stability for us in the trunk. Very useful whether we're able to get around on our feet or we're sat in a chair or using a wheelchair with which to get around in. So that's 11 movements in total. Well done. That's a lot. It does mean that we don't have many more to do because we're going to finish off with the very last movement in Shibashi. So again, whether you're seated or standing, I'll stay seated, but if you're standing, we're just letting the hands push forward, lift, and then draw in. And then let the hands relax. If you've got the scope, you can let the hands come to the sides if you are sat down, but you might have to negotiate armrests. It might be that you can just bring them across the tops of the knees like so. So again, really do adapt the movements to suit your situation. I really want you to embrace this idea that you are in charge of your body. So move in a way that suits you, no one else. It's a bit of a different philosophy, isn't it? To really embrace the idea of our diversity and difference and kind of be very comfortable with that difference and embrace it. Again, it's a movement that lends itself to a breath in, followed by a breath out. Nice movement to do towards the end of the evening. Maybe if you have a bit of a routine before bedtime to get you in that headspace for sleep, this could be a nice movement to do. I'm going to do one more, just because it's a nice kind of sense of gathering and bringing things to a close. Well done. Those of you who are going to watch later, if you've done all of that, well done too. Some of those movements are challenging, aren't they? The early movements are really focused in the upper body. So we're getting a certain amount of strengthening going on in the shoulders, the shoulder girdle, and in the limbs. And then we begin to build some rotation in. And now we've built in some bigger movements where the torso is leaning forward. So again, you can see how we're building through the movements a bit more complexity, a bit more challenge. If the challenge is a bit too much for any one particular movement, ease it back, so to speak, grade it for yourself. It might be that you move only a little bit in certain movements, but that's okay. Little bits are better than nothing. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to stop the recording. If anyone wants to have a chat, they can do so. There we go.